Afternoon to everyone who have gathered here today and to those who have tuned in virtually. We are now also kicking off our parallel sessions, and these are only about one specific segment of the entire ecosystem. We're talking aviation. And we've lined up a very notable list of presenters here to tell us why we should be talking about it. And that leads us perfectly to our first speaker, a fellow Estonian, straight from the European Commission, the Director General for Mobility and Transport, Mr. Hendrik Olaley. And he should join us over the video.
You know, with all these equipment, you are never sure whether anyone sees you or not.
Yeah, we don't at the moment, actually. But it's good to hear your voice. Hopefully we can.
Thank you.
Sure.
Let us see what we can do on our side.
Perfect. Now we see you as well.
Okay. Sorry, we seem to have still a problem with the microphone here, so give us a second.
Mm-hmm. We can hear you almost okay. And
I have got an echo on my side, but I think it's okay now. No.
Now we heard you again, but it's cutting out occasionally.
No, because I can't speak because there is an echo.
Is it from our side?
It's possible, yes. Could you look into it, please?
Right?
Shall I try again? No, it's still the echo.
Yeah, could be. You can talk at least. I will try to sort out our end here through maybe my mic.
Okay. I think now it's better already. Okay, so thank you very much for having me, and it's a pleasure to join you on this Estonian Hydrogen Days. And even though it is a virtual participation, we already saw the challenges over the last minutes, but at least that allows me to reach out to you. And of course, this is a topic which I consider being a very important priority. I have personally always been a believer in the hydrogen solutions, even when this topic was not sexy at all. I mean, nowadays it seems that everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon, everybody wants to be somehow involved in the future hydrogen revolution and supports it. 5 years ago, I can tell you, even in Brussels, that was still a niche thing, and there were not that many people who were considering hydrogen playing a key role or an important role. Let's see whether it plays the key role, but a definitely important role in the future fuel mix. And of course, it is very interesting to see how all this has developed over the last years. And especially last year, when we set out in the Commission also our approach in a number of strategic documents, notably the hydrogen strategy, which was driven by the Commissioner for Energy, our own Kadri Simson, who has definitely done a lot in order to put hydrogen on the map and is doing a great job. And of course, in the area of transport and mobility, our sustainable and smart mobility strategy, which is the kind of a roadmap that has been put on the table for the next decade. And in fact, also, how do we see transport changing and becoming more sustainable and also smarter? Because if we want to make Europe the carbon neutral continent by 2050, then a lot of the heavy lifting has to be done by the transport and mobility sector, whose emissions have to drop about 90%. Our approach here has been holistic. We aim to address both the demand and the supply side of vehicles and fuels, as well as the infrastructure needs. The reality is that all these things come together. They are the different sides that are supporting each other, and without one, the other one wouldn't stand either. And we have a variety of policy instruments at EU, national and local levels, and we must pull all the levers to make the change also happen. Among the fuel solutions, the new mobility strategy identifies really hydrogen as a fuel with great potential when it comes to about transport and mobility. And that is particularly the case where direct electrification is impossible or too complicated, like in aviation. But I also believe that I mean, there are still, let's say, there are still a lot of gaps. There are still a lot of open questions. There is still a lot of innovation that needs to be done when we can really talk about the uptake of hydrogen. But it has a lot of benefits as well compared to, for example, other solutions. And many would say even that this is today the most promising solution for the whole sector when we talk about the time span of 30 years or beyond. So let's see. But I think the most important thing is this is not for us to decide. This is for the market to decide. And we need to create the conditions. We need to create the policy framework. We need to create the necessary incentives. And then it is for the market to see how to take it forward. And especially when we talk about the different areas, then and today I understand, especially in this subsetting, we are talking about aviation. Then it's clear that it is a very, very serious potential solution. But of course, the jury is still out there, and it is something where there is a lot still to be discussed. The bottom line is that the whole transport and mobility sector needs to become cleaner. Today, the emissions are coming predominantly from the road sector, but both aviation and maritime, they constitute together about slightly more than one-fourth of total transport emissions, but it is still quite a lot for both, accounting about 13%. And that also means that the aviation decarbonization is essential, and many things need to be done in the sector. Our mobility strategy notes that by 2035, large zero-emission aircraft should be available to the market. And today, I would say that it seems to be possible. But of course, that depends very much on the innovation, and depends also how the whole process, including the certification, will happen. And I believe that in 2050, clean hydrogen will be a key fuel for the aviation sector, either directly or as a basis for producing renewable synthetic fuels. And I also note that this is also reflecting in the European aviation sector's recent decarbonization roadmap, Destination 2050. Let me just say a few words also of role of hydrogen in decarbonization of wider mobility, because when we talk about it, we must look at the full chain of production, distribution and use. The analysis underpinning our mobility strategy indicates that by 2050, hydrogen must provide around 20% of the transport fuel mix if we are to reach the climate neutrality. And low carbon synthetic fuels derived from hydrogen would need to contribute an additional 20% of the fuel mix. So green hydrogen, particularly important in circumstances where I said where the other options are simply not viable. And in addition, hydrogen fuel cell technology will also play an important role in long distance, heavy duty road haul and in rail. However, currently, hydrogen accounts only less than 2% of the Europe's energy consumption, and 96% of this hydrogen is produced through the natural gas. Therefore, the hydrogen strategy from last year notes that by 2030, hydrogen needs to become an intrinsic part of our integrated EU energy system with at least 40 gigawatts of renewable hydrogen electrolyzers. Therefore, and thereafter, we will need to ramp up large scale. I think it goes very well with the time span that we have in mind. And in order to support this, the Commission has also launched the Clean Hydrogen Alliance, bringing together industry actors across the entire value chain. And mobility is a key part of this. And when we come to aviation, then I think we need to see the bigger picture. I mean, today in aviation, there are two particular challenges. But again, as I said, before getting there, I just wanted in a very nutshell to give the wider picture in general. But in aviation, you have two major challenges. One, of course, is the recovery from the COVID crisis, which, as we know, hit the aviation sector particularly hard. And the other one is, of course, making aviation more sustainable, because this is essential in order to the sector to have the license to grow. Some would even go and to say the license to exist, because the expectations, societal expectations, are also much higher towards the sustainability of aviation. Aviation can and will become more sustainable. There is no question about that. The question is only about the speed of this process, because this is not something that can happen overnight, or you snap the fingers and the sector is going to become more sustainable. This is definitely not the case. And it is something where it is very important to lay down the right processes, to lay down the right framework, again, to lay down the right incentives, and also the targets which would help the sector to move forward. Because if we talk about the most important component in making aviation more sustainable, which is the sustainable aviation fuels, then it is absolutely clear that there is going to be a very long road ahead of us. Today, it counts about 0.05% of the total usage in jet fuel, concerning jet fuel, but it needs to be moved to a level of, let's say, 5% or 6% in 2030 as part of the fuel blend. And in order to achieve that, we are putting on the table next week the proposal Refuel EU Aviation, which idea is to industrialize the production and also to create the necessary conditions for the uptake of sustainable aviation fuels, which, of course, in the first and foremost, we are talking about sustainable biofuels. We are also talking about the synthetic fuels, and there are going to be the targets for both, which still require political adjustment. But we believe that what we will put on the table is realistic, having spoken to the fuel producers, having spoken also, of course, to the airlines, and what is their ability for the uptake. It's going to be somewhat, I would say, challenging, definitely ambitious, but also doable, where, of course, the producers would say that they can do more. And the airlines are, of course, more cautious about the uptake, because it's not only about using them as part of the fuel mix, but it is also about something where you need to internalize the price effects, where today the sustainable biofuels are about 4 times of the price of kerosene, 3.5 times, and the synthetic fuels about 10 times. So I think this is also something which needs to be taken into account. But for 2050, I think that it is realistic to expect that you would have about 65% of the fuel mix, and of course many other new solutions on the table as well. And of course, that leads us also very much to the role of hydrogen in aviation. As I said earlier, the jury is still out there. We don't know exactly how that is going to phase in, but we see two different approaches in two sides of the Atlantic. And that is, of course, a very interesting development. In Europe, the world's largest aircraft manufacturer today, Airbus, has been making a very clear choice. They believe that the liquid hydrogen powered aircraft are part of the future, and they are also doing everything that they can now in terms of the innovation in order to manufacture for the commercial use in 2035, a fully certified I would say mid-size passenger aircraft. So we talk about 150, 180 seater, which has the ability also to fly a few thousand kilometers. So that is now on the table of Airbus technology department, innovation department, and I spoke to the chief technology officer who said, look, we are not looking at the other options when we talk about the new generation aircrafts or zero emission aircrafts. We are looking at the solution where we would base the aircraft on the liquid hydrogen, which of course means that if it's possible that we have it in 2035, it takes a hell of a lot of time until, of course, it becomes internalized in all the fleets. But definitely, that's a very interesting development. And that's why also the hydrogen solutions are so important in aviation. On the other side, you go to the other side of the Atlantic and you talk to the Americans. And actually last week, we had a very good discussion with them on a joint event with the Federal Aviation Authority. And there the view is very different. They, for the moment, don't really see that much future for hydrogen in aviation. Boeing is also far more skeptical. And what they see today is that they can bank themselves on purely on the sustainable, in particular on the sustainable biofuels, which are turned to sustainable aviation fuels, and which would be their way of getting to the sustainability in aviation. Also, of course, with better design, more efficient engines, and so on. So for them, for the moment at least, hydrogen is not something which is immediately in the cards, and they are not yet entirely convinced that this is going to provide a solution. So two very interesting approaches from the two world's largest aircraft manufacturers, and of course very interesting to see where we are going to land and where we are in 5 or 10 years. I think for Europe this is a perfect opportunity. We can become the world leader in hydrogen, liquid hydrogen powered aircrafts, if this is something which is going to be part of the future, or then we have made a lot of investments into innovation, but have not succeeded in that. I, of course, very much hope for the former and not for the latter. And there, of course, the Commission also is to support this development and to establish the enabling environment to achieve this. We support the research and the innovation under the Horizon Europe, in particular through partnerships like Clean Aviation and Clean Hydrogen. And we have proposed this partnership for clean aviation under the Horizon Europe. We aim to have the Establishing Act adopted later on this year. In addition to developing the planes, we must also develop adequate ground infrastructure at airports to support operations of hybrid electric and hydrogen aircrafts. And I also note the ambitious industrial projects which are underway in Europe, many with the promise of green air travel in the decades to come. So it will be very interesting development. I think it is very important to have a strong focus on the hydrogen role of hydrogen and hydrogen solutions in mobility and transport, and of course, in particular in aviation. And I'm sure there is a lot more to come. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to address you shortly.
Thank you very much, Henrik. We're out of time, but I do have one very quick question with an easy answer.
Now I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Now we're getting all kinds of other things, except for a voice. Can you hear me? Let's try this one. Can't even find it.
If you are saying something, unfortunately, I'm not able to hear you.
Is this working? No? Working now? No? We're not getting voice. Working? Working? Not? No. Okay, but we're out of time in that case. Maybe we can just submit a written question to Henrik for later, because we are having way too many options that are not giving away sound. technical team, please.
Since I don't hear at all, and I hope that you hear me, I'm not able to take any of your questions, which I find regrettable. But nevertheless, let's accept the technological challenges between Brussels and Tallinn. I wish you all a very nice seminar and very good discussions, and of course a very nice summer to all of you. And I'm sure we will see each other soon in one way or the other. Bye-bye.
That's great. Has to be in person next time. Right, so now we have a difficult connection with Brussels over. Proof that everybody needs to fly to Estonia whenever possible. But next up, we have our next speaker who could easily be the Minister of Aviation. But for now, we'd like to welcome the Minister of Entrepreneurship and Information Technology, Mr. Anders Sutt. Thank you. Thank you. And let's hope your voice works better than mine.
Let's hope, yes.
Yes.
Hopefully it works. Voice works. Every time there is a problem with a connection, then I think, okay. When I look at my title, Minister for IT, who is guilty what is a good, to whom I can point the finger and then say, man, take a mirror. Okay, but these things do happen. I think it's still better to have hybrid or virtual if no meeting at all. And a good friend of mine, Hendrik, of course, outlined pretty well where we are, what lays ahead. So I will give it perhaps sort of from a bit different perspective, but I think we eventually will land on the comparable conclusions. If I take like three key drivers, what move us or push us ahead for the next 10, 15, 25 years, basically for the next generation, it is precisely the green transition, what already was mentioned, where hydrogen clearly is a part of a solution. It is digitalization happening across the board, not only in the tech industry, but throughout the economy. And thirdly, the innovation. I think we are in a point in time where many breakthrough solutions and innovations will happen. And certainly aviation will be part of a story. If we look back for past 25 years, it has been certainly the fastest period of change in the recent history of mankind. Just sort of small, simple examples. If you take a mobile phone first, I mean, it took decades in the US to get fixed line to every home. And then it took really a lapse of a time or a lapse of a moment to get smartphone in every people's or almost every people's pocket. And these big changes, I think, offer huge opportunities, but at the same time, it has also caused a lot of tension in the society, which needs to be managed so that we can, as a society as a whole, move forward. So the pace is really important, and of course, the COVID has only accelerated. Again, if somebody would have asked or predicted or made a bet, say 2 years ago, look, it's very normal. Actually, it's a mainstream in the summer of 2021, have hybrid or only virtual conferences meeting. A person probably would have been looked at as somebody who is completely lost any touch with the real world, but here we are. So that's why I think what Hendrik nicely outlined, it's point in time of a strategic bet or a choice, like Airbus versus Boeing, which way to go. And of course, the trick of it is really that we need to predict what is going to fly in the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now. I think today is also historic in Tartu. I don't know how many of you heard or know, but there was world inaugural launch of hydrogen-powered self-driving car. Again, something what maybe even 3-4 years ago people would have said, okay, it's not really serious. I mean, you can play it somewhere around. But that is something what was launched today with Auvetech and Tartu University cooperation. And I think it's significant also from a point of view what we are really willing to see in Estonia, that there would be more cooperation and more tangible outcomes between the universities and businesses. And it's also a big step in innovation, combining the hydrogen, combining the self-driving car. Is it going to be driving around in next year? No. But is it going to be driving around in 5 years from now? Most probably. If we look at the electric vehicles, for example, I mean, there are still many people who doubt, or I think most people doubt that, okay, this is not really reliable. When I can charge, where I can charge, the network is not really there. But the trend has already broken. I mean, all major car manufacturers are going electric. How does it fit with hydrogen? I think is an interesting question. Is it going to be a substitute? Is it going to be complementarity? I have no clue. But I think it's just a sign of another trend that we are breaking away with a fossil world and moving to more green. So I had a very interesting visit today, and that has really nothing to do with hydrogen. But I think it was, again, important in terms of giving you a perspective. What is the mindset and values and preferences of future consumers? We were visiting a company, Foxway, which is basically refurbishing used cell phones and laptops, tablets. Very fast growing market, very high demand, very many interested people, because 30% of consumers switch the phone or replace the phone in 1 year. It's still usable. Another 30% in 2 years. And these things usually are thrown away, but they shouldn't. So I think there is, for a younger generation, a very clear preference of going green. And that's why I think it also goes to aviation and to any other industry. If you want people to fly with you or use your hydrogen-powered drones to deliver goods, you have to be green, you have to be sustainable. And I think these are big things what are going to happen. And I would like to see more of these big things going to happen here in Estonia. Like we launched today the first self-driving autonomous car powered on hydrogen. Could be many other things what we could be first in the world, or at least best in the world. Because this is what we need to get back, the global ambition, the risk appetite to test and to learn. And why Estonia? I think I have used recently an example of Pfizer-BioNTech. Pfizer was not really the company who was behind the scientific part of a vaccine. It was BioNTech. But in order to scale, you need a brand, you need a balance sheet. And that is something, I think, where we can combine in Estonia the smaller companies, startups, scale-ups, or even in their respectable age. But the small size oftentimes gives you agility and ability to innovate. And that's why I think if we could create more here, our own Pfizer-BioNTechs, teaming up with somebody who's a big balance sheet. There are companies in Estonia who already are cooperating with Airbus. This is one example where I would like to see more cooperation and collaboration opportunities, because Airbus is huge. I mean, and the business maps across many industries. And I'm sure there are other fields and other businesses in Estonia who could complement and also give value to Airbus and companies alike. So to attract the big names to team up like in COVID times, many small companies have done, is really important, because if we can't scale, I think the hydrogen is not the source of power either. So, but you need to innovate first, and then to get it to a scalable level and go forward. So I think today's event is also significant in terms of showing how quickly and how significantly Estonia has changed in their view. En Lust, who is a professor and was behind the hydrogen solution for a self-driving car, his team has been working on it for past 10-15 years, which brings us back to this time perspective. I mean, what we talk here today is going to be industrial in 10 or 15 years from now, maybe earlier, but it certainly is going to be. And that's why it's important to be in this early phase, to reap the benefits, to be among those who change the world. And that is precisely what we would like to achieve here in Estonia. So anybody who has a global ambition, wants to scale, wants to be in a country which is digital, which is innovative, you are welcome. Estonia is open for business. Talents are welcome here, to the university, to businesses, and let's make something great out of hydrogen, and we will live in a planet which is cleaner than it is today. So that, I think, is a reasonable way forward. I want to do something good for our next generation. So that's my only goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe there's also a question from the audience. I'm sure we can take one. Thank you. Yes. I can translate as well.
I'm Teet Randma. Today I'm here as a representative of City of Tallinn, but I'm historically famous for starting electric vehicle development in Estonia back in 2007, 2008. And partly thanks to our lobby, we did this ELMO project and we made this charging network and we supported some cars, but now it's kind of in a rundown and now we are talking about hydrogen. Although in these many lectures there was talking that hydrogen is a like niche fuel, that aviation and marine sector, they maybe cannot function with battery electric vehicles, but how can we really make it happen that the case that we had in Estonia with electric cars, that we were really neck to neck with Tesla at the early stage is in a sense that we launched our first car the same year they launched their first car. But we don't have this boost to get into the manufacturing. And I'm kind of afraid that hydrogen is the same way, that the first innovative projects, they get money, but then only thing is left is cost, but no real societal impact. Like in electric cars, we have like 2,000 electric cars now. But if we want to have an impact, we have like 700,000 vehicles in Estonia. So we need to have a really, really big scope. Or how do we solve it this time around?
I think ELMO was just ahead of time. If you go back 10 years from today, of course, the electric vehicles, the range was smaller, the price was higher, but I think something of uptake in electric cars is also in our heads. Many people say that, look, if I take electric car and then comparable combustion engine car, well, the old style is far cheaper. But that is far cheaper only if you look at the sales price. If you look at the cost of a life cycle, you come to a different conclusion. We need to get rid of a mindset that we compare the prices what are at the sales offices. So is hydrogen going to be a niche product? I don't know, maybe. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try and experiment and innovate. Electric cars probably, at least in the passenger traffic, will become much faster than hydrogen-powered self-driving vehicles of the last mile. But I think there is a sequence. and where one doesn't really exclude the other. I think there is also in the passenger side is probably more of a question of habits. Do you really need to own a vehicle, or is more something what you rent? In aviation, I don't know, when we come to a point where the planes maybe are also autonomously flying, which we actually do, I think, a little bit already today. So the pilot is more like just for case. But I think it's equally. I think what is really relevant, and again, it goes back to how clean all this sort of transportation is. If we think in terms of Helsinki and Tallinn, there is 80 kilometers of distance, but kilometers doesn't really matter. The only thing what matters in terms of connectivity is time to travel. And if we can make a fast, clean connection between Tallinn and Helsinki, then we can talk about the twin city. Does it have to be a fuel-powered conventional plane? Probably not. But there are solutions technologically, which I'm not really an expert to talk about, but I'm confident enough to say that there will be solutions around, which will be also commercially viable, and we will get there. So it's really yes, with some things we are ahead of time, but that's good actually. Then maybe we can create something important in Estonia.
Yeah, my question point was that how we can get from this pilot stage, that it's very easy to get pilot, especially if European Union gives money, but we really should look like in terms of long roadmap and funding along the way, first for prototypes, then for manufacturing and so on.
But I think that is precisely where we need scale, and for scale we need cooperation with the big companies globally. Otherwise, I mean, to think that we will in Estonia become the world largest manufacturer of hydrogen-powered even drones is probably unrealistic. And we shouldn't aim for it. We should aim that we will be part of technology development. Where the thing is manufactured at the end of the day depends on tons of other things. But I think it's more for us to be in this technology development base. But for that, you need a collaboration partner, be it Airbus, be it any other company, so that we can move forward. And I know you have your collaboration partners, so we need big names. That's simple as that. If we can't get big names as a collaboration partners, yes, in that case, we will only be capable of doing tests.
And the good thing is that our next speaker is actually going to that roadmap that you mentioned, which is lovely, because you answered my question already in your talk, so I won't be asking anything. Okay. But thank you very much. Thank you. Because next up, we actually have from the Estonian Aviation cluster, the general manager, Mr. Kristo Reinsalu. There's your clicker. Yep. And let's press go on that one. So you have to switch the screen, please, as well.
So good afternoon. Firstly, I think I should be grateful for a few people who are sitting in this audience as well. I think first of all for Mr. Raido Lember, who is actually introduced Marek Allikso for me back in January. When he just turned to me and said that there is one crazy guy who are like knowing everything about hydrogen and who are kind of, let's say, investigating possible ways to use hydrogen also in aviation. And secondly, also for our minister, Mr. Andres Sutt, who kind of gave us let's say, kind of additional boost for our ambitious ideas, let's say, mentally and also, let's say, by his actions supporting everything what we are doing right now in our cluster. But I'll just quickly, let's say, run through my slides. Actually, hydrogen. Can I step here?
Should be still visible.
Okay. So hydrogen is actually, let's say, not currently related among our priorities. So we have like different priorities. So everything what's going on in aerospace industry. So let's say we are making first steps, getting closer to Airbus, but not only. We are just trying to sneak closer to the other side of Atlantic as well. So trying to get closer to Boeing. Also, everything related to air cargo development among our priorities. So in the central, I put everything which is related to future aviation, and this is like, let's say, mainly connects for today's topic, which is hydrogen. Also, different things what Minister just said about digitalization. So let's say regarding ICT in general, let's say we are thinking that ICT could be one way to make a new, let's say, to repeat or replicate so-called Tiger Leap, which just happened a few decades ago. So aviation has let's say, all the conditions in place to repeat the same scenario. And also, let's say, aviation education. So we have here in this audience also people from Aviation Academy. So newly appointed rector has been let's say, guiding this organization to the very right direction, and also, let's say, penetrating all these new ways of doing businesses. And I think it's really important. So what's the future hold for Estonian aviation in terms of hydrogen? I think firstly, I just want to bring out that the fact that we started discussion already back in March that, or kind of starting to investigate opportunities whether Estonian aviation could join European Clean Hydrogen Alliance. Clean Hydrogen Alliance, yeah, and now it happened that, or kind of let's say several applications were made, and eventually it happened so that Estonian aviation cluster is currently one and only cluster in Europe which is represented in this quickly evolving network. And the other fact, so in relative terms, we kind of, let's say, having kind of leading position in Europe. So 7.4% of projects were submitted from Estonia. So let's say, I just don't want to use, let's say, actual numbers, but in relative terms, we look now pretty good, or much more better than let's say, Marek described me already back in February when he told me that Estonia is still kind of, let's say, one big hole or one big white hole on the European map regarding hydrogen. So at least in aviation, we have been able to make right steps on right direction. So what else we are doing? I won't stop on this project longer because we have here Mr. Jan Palmer from X-Fly who is going to tell you more about, I don't know how much he could actually lift the cover, but let's say they are having a really ambitious project on their mind. To retrofit existing ATR 72 aircrafts, let's say, by giving a chance to start flying hydrogen fueled aircraft in the future. And also investments into hydrogen infrastructure should be made. So unfortunately, Tallinn Airport hasn't been as active as some, let's say, as leading airports in Europe. But let's say we are still, let's say, have been trying to encourage them. And I think the best encouragement is always if you can have good examples or good role models. And in that sense, I think Port of Tallinn has made a good example. So and since let's say logistically, airport as well as port is pretty close to each other, I think it gives quite good opportunities for future collaboration. What else? Going back again to January or February. When it came clear that Estonia will submit the proposal submit the proposal application to European Union Recovery and Resilience Facility, then we started to wonder inside cluster that can we get let's say some amount of money as well from EU Recovery and Resilience Facility in order to boost all our future projects. And in this context, actually, the whole thing started to develop. As lot of people who are, let's say, physically also, let's say, living in Tartu or let's say based in Tartu, we just came up with an idea to create or establish so-called Silva-Est Development Center in Tartu, which let's say which will unite or connect all these different actors who are already, let's say, active in different developments regarding climate neutral economy. As you see from the picture, actually, it has, let's say, it's not especially for foreigners, it's not acknowledgeable that all these organizations are pretty close to each other, because on this map, actually, we used a scale which equals 1 centimeter equals 5 kilometers. So in real life, all these organizations are pretty close to each other. So in that sense, we have quite good opportunities to, let's say, to match joint interests. And I just quickly run through a kind of, let's say, show you that it is not kind of, let's say, kind of fantasy or let's say ski-fee thing. That we also let's say outlined let's say quite a specific budget which is needed for the center to be created. And what's the impact, or let's say what's a goal? I think firstly, actually, we had on our mind that we would want to penetrate exponentially growing drone services market. So we are seeing potential for let's say for bringing some additional billions euros in terms of turnover to Estonian economy. And also since airspace density is pretty low, especially after COVID, and especially all around Tartu area, then it has been said already earlier that we might already have the greenest airspace in the Europe or even in the world, and why don't we not use this opportunity? Why should we go to I don't know, to the most northern part of Scotland with the most, I don't know, harshest weather what you could ever imagine, only in a reason to test the aircraft, only because only there the airspace density is low enough in order to carry out all the tests. Why we should go to northern Scotland? Why wouldn't we do it in Estonia? Why couldn't we use this unused airspace for testing not only drones but also all these future aircrafts, which are fueled by electricity on batteries or hydrogen. And my last slide, actually, we have also had a discussion that Estonia might have another opportunity, or let's say another good chance, and this is related to regional air mobility. So if all these, let's say, new futuristic aircrafts have been developed or will be developed, then they should be flying somewhere, and they should connect some dots with each other. And we saw the opportunity that again Estonia could be well used, or well, let's say perfect ground for using this new generation aircrafts to make our connectivity much better, or let's say the best ever connectivity what Estonia could ever had. So as connectivity has always been, let's say, even mostly for politicians, the most important issue of all, then we could let's say we could push the very right button in that sense. So thank you very much, and I will be thankful for a few questions, and I will stay around all day long.
Lovely, thank you. I have a quick one straight away. Number question. You had 7.4% of European aviation projects, right? How much budget do you need to make it 7.4 European market share then?
Actually, we haven't yet made those calculations, and I know that Xfly has probably might have submitted their project as well. Tallinn Airport has submitted their project. So, but in general, or in total, I don't know what's a cumulated number of yeah.
Depends on if those projects directly translate to market share, right?
Yeah. If it wouldn't, I don't know. I believe, or I hope that maybe it will be possible to invest less and to get more in return. So maybe the investment shouldn't be in that amount, and 7.4. I don't know. Let's say in big numbers, Estonia always fails. So we have to find actually some other angle.
Okay. Well, with that takeaway, then I'd like to pass it on to the airline that you already mentioned, and that's who's already talking about hydrogen. Please welcome the CEO of Xfly, Mr. Jan Palmer. Thank you. Yeah. Getting you the correct slides as well. Yeah, and your clicker. Thank you.
Okay. I have to talk in this one, yeah. Minister, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be a little bit strange because I take the opportunity to make two presentations at one, so you get one for free, yeah. I'm also acting as the chairman of European Regional Airlines, and I wanted to start in that angle, and then I can come back to what we do in Xfly later. But we just recently, in February, launched this Destination 2050, and this is very much what Henrik Hollolay was referring to, because what we have done is ERA is only one part, but there is a lot of other associations basically covering everything within aviation. Airlines, manufacturers, airports, suppliers, etc. So, and we have done, it's a fantastic job done by this group. It's a Dutch, how shall I say, consultancy group who has been working with this report. And what it is basically an enormous commitment from the aviation industry to actually get to zero carbon and at 2050, and this was what Henrik was talking about. Then you can believe it or not if it's going to happen. That's another thing. But it is like the minister said before: if you don't try, we don't know. So we just have to start to be able to do something. And you can see here, this is sort of say what they believe. And here is technology development, kerosene, hydrogen, as we have talked about. Also new technology. It's not so much battery-driven big aircraft, because that is still, from a technical point of view, pretty challenging. So that's why we are looking for other fuels. And of course, as we are talking about this sustainable aviation fuel, biofuel, it's also a big question if that is going to be, everybody sees it as a huge possibility, but it's also competing with other, how shall I say, other use of this biocide. So it's a lot of questions still, of course, to be handled. But what we are focusing on is a little bit this, the hydrogen-powered aircraft. And you can say that, yeah, 2035, but it can be even faster than that if you, because here they are talking about basically new aircraft. And to design and get a new aircraft approved by the civil aviation authorities and so on, it's a pretty long period, because it's like like putting a new airport somewhere. You know, it takes 15 years until you can get it through. With aircraft, it's about the same. It takes very long time. So this is what they are looking for, but we are also looking for doing it a little bit faster. This is what we want to do in the aviation sector. And it was good to hear, Henrik, that he has cash. We really like that, because this is the biggest issue, actually. You can say that we want all this, but how do you transform from today's economy to a new economy? This is going to be costly. He was talking about incentives, and I hope he meant cash then, because that is what we need. And this part. So the big thing here is, when I'm talking as a president of one of these associations, is that we have to do it together with the European Commission, with the national authorities and so on, because we cannot do it ourselves. The aviation industry cannot achieve this by themselves. That must be clear for everybody. And the heaviest part is, so to say, technology and fuel. So it's not so hard to understand, but it's hard to achieve. So and we wrote just a few days ago, 21st of June, we wrote a pretty clear message to the President of European Commission, von der Leyen, that we appreciate that they really want to support the industry to achieve this commitment we have put together. So, and it sounds also like Henrik Holloway is, sort of say, giving that message. So hopefully, if we can all work together with this, it might be able to we might be able to actually achieve something. So from there, I will switch to the CEO role in XFly, which is an Estonian airline. And we are also committed against this, because we are working as a capacity provider. It doesn't really say you anything, but it's very simple. We are subcontracted to the major airlines. We operate to SAS, we have been operating to LOT and a lot of other bigger airlines. because we are operating the regional sector where they are not so focused on, but they need the feed into their hubs. And if we cannot, we as an airline cannot provide these kind of carbon zero services in the future, they will take somebody else. So for us, it's a must. We have to be part of it. And the kind of aircraft we operate today is this ATR 72-600. We have also CRJs and Embraers. And this is a little bit a different problem because the idea is not to put electric engines on these guys. It's more the fuel development, and that will take a little bit longer time. But here we have, this one is a little bit more interesting because it's already a turboprop. And the technology for electric turboprops already exists. So it's more a question of how do we get the electricity we need to operate it. And there are two basically ideas, which there might be more. Marek has tried to learn me a little bit in this business, but there might be more. But these two we are talking to. And so as I said, the bigger aircraft needs some kind of other technology. But here, it might be even possible to have something ready within 5-6 years. And this is what the minister was, so to say, saying. So that's why I nodded when you said it, that it might be. And this is the Zero Avia concept, which differs from the other one, because here they believe that the airport can produce the hydrogen directly at the airport. And okay, it's a marketing picture. You see that it looks so easy, huh? Just put a propeller there and it works, huh? Yeah. That's not how it will be, of course. You most likely need a little nuclear power station at the airport to produce and so on. What they will do is that they put an electric engine here and they make something on the aircraft so they can get this hydrogen fuel into the aircraft. Basically, as we do today. We just connect and we pump the hydrogen in and we go. So from a logistic point of view for us, that would be a super solution, of course. But the airport has to do something. And but from a logistic airline operation, that would be a super solution. The other solution is more like, it's Universal Hydrogen, is an American company, and they basically do it in, they produce somewhere else, and then they move these hydrogen in small bottles, and basically fill the aircraft with the bottles and connect it to the same idea like an electrical engine and so on. So this is an alternative solution. The problem for me or for us working as an airline is that either we rebuild the aircraft for these bottles, or we have another system. And who is going? How do we choose here? I don't know. Not yet, at least. So they have thought about the same thing here, but certainly completely different ways of handling the hydrogen, and that's why it's interesting with this, with the whole conference, so to say, to understand how can we produce, how can we get hydrogen, how do we logistically handle it. Anyway. It is promising, but it's also challenging because it has to be approved. We have to choose technology. It's a huge investment. An aircraft has a lifetime of about 20 years. So it's not that I can do it and then change in a few years' time. I have to write it off at the end. So it's a very long commitment from the airline point of view, and this makes it a little bit complicated when you take a decision, of course. And then you have the supply and logistic. The price, here comes also a problem. If we're going to start within 5-6 years, it's still going to be the old technology aircraft will still be there. So if we take the investment to convert into this, I will compete for the projects with guys who doesn't do it. They keep on going jet fuel because they are not forbidden to do it. And we are very early in this process. So I don't know exactly what Mr. Holloway can fix here, so we can neutralize that problem. But this has to be part of it. And for us, it's another issue that hydrogen, whatever you do, it takes more volume in the aircraft. It's 3 or 4 times more volume to fuel it up so I can get the range. So if I convert another aircraft, one existing aircraft to this, instead of 70 seats, I get 45. So Mr. Holiday has to pay the other passengers I missed there. So it's a big commercial financial issue on top of everything else. That is what I would like to say. So what is clear is that we might have an aircraft available, but we can't do all the other things ourselves. We need to work together with other people who are expert in the electrical engine and how to produce the hydrogen, etc. So it's, as everybody has said already, that we need to work together. And we have, as Christo was talking about, yes, with the help of Marek and some other people, we have started to activate ourselves in this area. So we have applied for a 20 million euro funding to basically convert one of our ATR 72-600s into this new technology, get it approved, get it working. And it could be so easy because the minister actually mentioned something which is in our mind, actually. And that is that if we can have the first aircraft going to Helsinki and back, fueled with hydrogen. And we don't even have to ask Helsinki Airport to give us any, because the hydrogen can be enough to go back and forwards. So we can have an Estonian project, like a pilot project, where we can actually show and get this approved for the future within a few years' time. But we need to get the partners to us here. And through this system, this European Clean Hydrogen Alliance, then that is the way to find these partners who would like to participate with us to do it. So it's a little bit, Christo mentioned that the airport has not, at least not so far, shown so much of interest here, but they must be a player here, so we have to do something about that. We would like to see it happen. I think it's fantastic, like you discussed before. Estonia can be a very good area for starting up these kind of things. But I mean, behind the ATR is Airbus, so you know. So we need to work with the big guys as well. That's for sure. But it could be a very good testing area. So we are committed, and we are completely wide open for cooperation with anybody who would like to participate in this project. Thank you.
So we are well over our usual time schedule here, but if the viewers don't mind, and I hope they don't, we can go a bit longer. We don't have to keep ours so rigidly as the main sessions, because we would still probably like to have a question for Mr. Jan Palmer from the audience. We can take one. Yes, back there.
You want this?
There's one extra.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much. Much for the presentation. It's very clear. I'm coming from the northern Netherlands, in which we have the first hydrogen valley in Europe, and we have an airport, which is our hydrogen valley airport. It's Eelde, Groningen Airport Eelde.
Groningen.
Yeah.
We've been operating to Groningen, but that was before.
That was before that issue with the COVID, etc. But it would be interesting because we are developing a hydrogen ecosystem there. We have the largest operational solar field on any operational airport of 22 megawatts. We're looking for an electrolyzer over there. You envisage the same, so it would be interesting to stick our heads together and see what can come up, because the cash Mr. Hollerlei supposedly holds can only be attained if we do it together with at least 2 European countries. And so we are very open to that. I've been communicating with my guys at Eelde, and they are really open to it. And I think Marek also knows that. So if this is an invitation, we gladly accept to dance.
I have the first one already. Yeah, that's good. No, we're going to certainly talk about that. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And now we also had the intro to Netherlands already, because we have next up Mr. Petrus Postma of Enflux talking about some of those synergies to make that economy work, right?
Yes, thank you, Marek, and also thank you to the Dutch Embassy making it possible for me to be here. Very happy to be here as well. A short thing about Enflux. We are a startup company in the Netherlands working on energy transition, feedstock transition, climate adaptation, and circular economy. But the specific thing I want to be talking to you about today is not the energy transition, but it's about the feedstock transition. And we'll get back to that later. Yeah,
there we go.
There I am full screen now, I guess. Very good. Because I'm not going to talk to you about something we all in this room, I think, accept is necessary to do. And that is getting our energy system to a sustainable alternative. And in that transition, hydrogen will be, in any case, a very important factor. I want to be talking about future-proof economy, about value propositions. So what can we add on top of that, what we have to do in any way, and where can we make the money? A few things, of course, on urgency, but we've been discussing that today already a lot, so I'm not going very deep into that. Industry is moving away from fossil, and you have to move with it, or you will be lagging behind and be the last one. And it's not only that industry is in transition, it's also the world of finance. The European Investment Bank has stated that from this year on, they will not be investing any money anymore in fossil projects. So let's not act if we have a choice here. If you invest for a future-proof alternative, you don't have an alternative than to invest in sustainability. But that brings an opportunity as well. We've been seeing that in the morning program as well. Of course, we have a huge challenge, but there are huge opportunities as well. And that's not only about investment sums, it's also about long-term value cases and value chains that will operate and will have sustainable economic relations for tens of years. And what we see here is that ports you relate to, ports as being central nodes in ecosystems and energy and feedstock systems, Hamburg, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, they are all in that transition and looking for international partners on sustainability. And I am at liberty to say this because at our company we developed the hydrogen strategy for Port of Tallinn. Helle Mai has been talking about this morning. And in essence, this is what we presented, and it relates very well to the other storyline of this morning regarding the hydrogen valleys. Because what we said is just start with the internal logistics on hydrogen. Your heavy-duty lifting in the harbor. If you can do that on hydrogen, you can get a feel of what the hydrogen economy is about. And from that, you can scale up to the public transport. The cases are all over the place. In the Netherlands, we have a lot of buses and trains already driving on hydrogen, so it's no rocket science. You can do that. And that way you can make the public and everyone in Estonia known to what hydrogen is. And from there you can scale up in volumes to domestic ferry lines, to international ferry lines. Don't forget that Helsinki really has a strong ambition on sustainability as well. So you'll have to meet that ambition. You'll have to partner up with them on that. But at the end, and that's what I want to look at with you, is the 2030 and later scale. Because you have the possibility to be really producing large-scale sustainable energy. And I'm coming back to the feedstock in a minute. But just know that you will not be the most competitive producers of hydrogen. The most competitive producers are in Chile, are in Morocco, are in Spain, and they have the combination of using wind and solar, and by that having a very constant energy input for the production of hydrogen. You are not going to compete on the production of hydrogen. You will not be the cheapest. So we'll have to find another value case that will really add something. And for that, we're going to look further into the value chain of hydrogen. And back to the slides you already saw this day around the use cases. And well, most of what we see here relates to the idea of hydrogen valleys in development, transportation, industry, energy storage and heating. But there's a specific one regarding export. So if you have the potential to produce more energy than you can use, you have to export that energy. And hydrogen typically is exported by different possible ways. We have the liquid organic hydrogen carriers, specifically interesting for industry. We have ammonia. We have, of course, the liquid hydrogen that's a little bit further off in the market. But I want to talk with you about the other two, methanol and sustainable aviation fuels. It's very hard to transport hydrogen itself, but if you can connect it to carbon molecules, you get sustainable hydrocarbons. And it's all about the carbon. You have the green carbon. And a lot of countries, we saw Spain, we saw Chile, we saw Morocco, they do not have the abundance of green carbon. So that's interesting. If we can produce sustainable energy, make hydrogen with it, but combine it with green carbon, we can produce interesting things. And maybe the most interesting thing here is the production of sustainable aviation fuels. We've seen that being discussed this morning a few times, and it's a lot of information, but I'm going to pinpoint, well, I'll just do it by my finger. This number. In the Netherlands, our government and the Schiphol airport and the airliners like KLM are now committing themselves to having 14% of their kerosene based on sustainable aviation fuels in 2030. That is more than 500,000 tons of sustainable aviation fuel they are committing to now. But we really have a problem. We don't have it. We don't have the feedstocks to produce this. We'll have to get the sustainable aviation fuel from elsewhere. And this is interesting, because there you really have that value proposition. You are now, as a country, exporting huge volumes of green carbon in pellets to be burned in the Netherlands, in France, in Britain, in coal-fired power plants. In the Netherlands, we just decided, government decided to not any longer subsidize this. So there will be no more subsidies for the burning of biomass. End of story. In Europe, European Commission is looking at how can we, as fast as possible, decrease or end subsidies for the burning of biomass. It's a given, it's a fact, it's ending. But you have that green carbon now being burned, you can do something else with it. You really are able to produce sustainable aviation fuels, and that's a market where there's no alternative. We've seen one aircraft, very important, but that's not the whole, and it's a mid-sized, and it's going to be industrial in maybe 2030. So we have to act now, and you have the feedstock. You have the feedstock, but you don't have the knowledge. In the Netherlands, we have companies like Sky Energy, that's a spin-out from KLM and Schiphol, and they are market leader in the production of sustainable aviation fuels. They are at this moment working together in Sweden. So yeah, the competition is working, but they stated explicitly, and we will be talking more about that, that they are very interested in being introduced into the Estonian ecosystem because they don't see how they need more production areas to get the sustainable aviation fuel they see on the market. Well, this is just one example. In the Netherlands, we also have Synkero. That's a company that's working with captured CO2 and hydrogen to produce sustainable aviation fuels. We have another one that's called Zenit, that's working with CO2 captured out of the air in combination with hydrogen to produce SAF. That's the end game, but they're already investing in it in the Netherlands. And we have the Finnish company Neste working on sustainable aviation fuels as well in the Netherlands. So we have a very broad knowledge base. And what I think is very interesting is that we really are able to bring something to the Estonian economy that will replace this economy. Because this is not what you are, and this oil shale industry will be ending. That's something we all agree on. But you need an alternative. And by no longer exporting biomass, but actually adding value to it in Estonia, you can make a change. And of course, there are a lot of challenges. I'm not going into that, because we'll tackle them, and they are not unique. We see those challenges everywhere. But this is my concern, because this is what defines Estonia. And if we are going to use biomass to produce it, to produce economic value, how do we do that in a sustainable way? Because there are so many criticism on what at this moment Estonia is doing with its biomass. We'll have to answer that. And if we are able to answer that, then we really have a value proposition for the Northwest European market. Thank you.
Thank you, Petrus. Okay. And as standard, one question, please, from somebody in the audience. For all the virtual questions, we'll forward you those as well. But there's going to be many of those probably. Yeah. So,
if
yes, please.
I can always
Yes,
ask.
yes.
Yeah.
Do we have the microphone as well then?
So what is standing on the way to get it all happen in practice?
It's these kinds of transitions always work in a...
I mean in Estonia.
Yeah. They always work in a dualistic system with governments and industry. So industry is looking for the comfort of government. That government says, okay, this is the way to go. And that gives comfort to invest. And at the same time, government is looking to industry to feel and know, is this going to happen? Because then we want to be backing it up. So I'm specifically here to see what business partners in Estonia really believe in this story and really want to commit. And I really want to be talking to governments about this. And at the same time, I did talk to Sky Energy. I did talk to Port of Amsterdam. I did talk to Vopak. And they are all in. But they are looking for comfort at the Estonian side. Are there business partners in Estonia that really believe in this? Because this is going to fly on belief, not on the question, are the finances there? Are the funds there? They are all there. That's not the problem.
But
Okay.
is it only getting feedstock in more sustainable way?
I am very much convinced that when you look at the Estonian forestry system, you can really harvest in a sustainable way. I'm only carrying shirts with flowers and the like on it, and I have studied in Wageningen University, and I really am convinced that this can be done. You can harvest green carbon in a sustainable way. No problem.
So we just have to solve the confidence chicken and egg problem then.
Very much.
Between both sides.
Very much. And that's not going to be done with the current accrediting system. You have to find another storyline.
We'll start working on it.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. And now, last but not least, the final speaker of our parallel session, talking about enabling all of that growth from a bit of a different standpoint. Karl-Erik Guint of the Estonian Aviation Academy, sorry. Estonian Academy works as well, right? Perfect.
As I'm the last speaker, I'm
I
quite,
think this one is active.
quite happy that in Estonia we have a saying that who speaks last speaks the best. So, haha. Anyways,
Do you get the slides as well quickly?
Anyways, my name is Karl-Erik, and I'm representing Estonian Aviation Academy and especially engineering department. And yeah, you can see now. And as I got this suggestion to make this short presentation here, I was thinking that my background is more in the traditional aviation engineering side, and I have no specific experience in be it hydrogen propulsion or be it fuel cells. But then I thought better of it. Oscar Wilde has said that that I never read books that I need to review on. It prejudices you so much. So with these provisos and without any prejudice, I would like to, as said, approach this topic a bit on a different angle. And today we have heard different views on the topic, and I really liked, for example, Jan's very generalist and positive approach on it. But engineers are known to be a very pessimistic lot because they usually need to do these very inconvenient things like standing under constructed bridges and all those sorts of things. So therefore, my first impressions thinking about this topic went back to 1937. And I'm sure that everybody knows the basic outline of this story, and I shall not elaborate too much on that. And I would like to jump a bit further in time to a very radical quote from Frank Zappa. And he said that there's more stupidity in the universe than hydrogen, and it has longer shelf life. So we don't need to go too far to find people who share ideas, and that they don't themselves know whether these ideas are fruits for logical thinking or whether they are subliminal tradition or whether they are very egoistic ambitions, and whether the ideas are backed with any empirical data. So critical thinking is the very first point or idea that I would like to advocate the most. So let me bring an example. So when we are thinking about innovation, then usually when people think that when things go really, really bad, then somehow, somewhere, magically, scientists will come up with something and solve the problem for all of us. And there's a critical flaw in this logic, because the scientists usually, and engineers as well, work in isolated environments with their experiments, and they develop solutions, sort of, we can say, in singularity. So some problems that are solved can work, whether they can work or they can work temporary. So to illustrate this, I would like to bring in another example. So it's oversimplified, so don't butcher me about this later on, because I'm not insinuating anything or trying to make any additional points with it, but it's just to illustrate the idea. Let's say COVID vaccine, we need to develop it. Somebody develops the vaccine, and it could be help for the lab, the people working there, but the upscale version of it to produce, let's say, 1.7 billion doses in a very short period of time, from the technical side, requires something completely different, and that is actually the real solution for the large bulk. So when thinking who would bring the chestnuts out of fire for me or for the general public, it's actually the engineering side. So we don't need to stick to this particular example. We can look at different innovations made back in time. Let's say hydrogen fuel cells, developed, or the phenomenon was first described in the early 1800s, or let's say for propulsion rocket fuel, hydrogen was used in early 1900s. So the innovation has been there for a while, but what we have really been lacking is the ingenuity to elaborate the idea and to upscale it. So maybe somehow sticking to to this wonderful image still, I mentioned that the discovery is done in isolation, usually, and it doesn't matter whether we're talking about real hardcore science or engineering. So I mentioned it in a very inevitable form, that you can't escape it, and then we can come back to the Frank Zappa's quote that stupidity has longer shelf life. So neither the scientists or engineers are free from the mishaps, to say the least, and we cannot always take in account the outside environment or all the many specific things that might appear. This single case of the Hindenburg illustrates, and unfortunately, it's not the only example, that the invention can never be better than its master. So if you want to be as volatile as the lightest element, then we need to advocate the education of engineers and the something that we call the engineering literacy in the general public. So to make a curve now from these previous times and coming back to 2021, so we might think that why not much has happened so far when we have lithium battery technology available, why we don't see, let's say, electric-powered aircraft, or when we have reasonable materials available to make containers, why we don't see hydrogen aircraft. So then the aviation sector differs from all of the rest that we heard in the morning sessions, is the very cruel and unforgiving nature of gravity and elevation. So we can think back again about Hindenburg. So implementing new ideas in aviation is very dangerous, and it requires a lot of confidence and a lot of empirical data. How I see it at the moment, and on basis of this deviation between theoretical knowledge and empirical knowledge, then aviation is suffering mostly on the latter, and that is why we have not seen many developments, and thankfully not many accidents that are related to implementing new ideas. So to overcome this misbalance that does not exist in many other fields, for example, we can think of using, let's say, new battery technology on electric scooters and getting it to technology readiness level 9 on it. It requires completely different test sets than to get technology readiness level 9 on aircraft systems or especially commercial aviation. So to overcome this misbalance and to gain empirical data with less blood, I'd say, then in my vision, the unmanned aviation technology might offer this pathway for aviation. So this can reduce the incapability of humans to think. So the unmanned technology might be a way out to start upscaling. So of course it's easy to model these things in very clear distinction basis that science, not science, unmanned, manned, the real life is again much more complex and it always gets smeared up. But when we think again back to the 1900s, when the innovation implementation level was very, very high, then the accident rate was very, very high. And when looking at these two wonderful pictures, then the theoretical difference between these two aircraft is not very big, but the empirical gap moving from one to another is enormous. So when we are talking about aircraft construction, how we build wing spars to save space in the fuselage rather than waste it on different containers. And not even thinking about the specific refueling procedures and so on. So it's necessary to start collecting the data from the smaller scale and start to upscale it. And so to quickly sum up and to think how to move from from small to large, and without this blood and death and explosions, or if explosions then moderate, then the unmanned aerial vehicles might be a good solution for that. And I personally do not share the optimism that for 2030 we would have ready services available for commercial transportation, but in unmanned systems I would expect great things in the very, very nearest future. So to be able to achieve that, hearing from many other speakers from today, a lot of engineering is expected to solve these tedious multiple problems. So then the education of engineers and engineering mindset should be expected and appreciated in all the commercial enterprises that want to tackle this problem. So I would like to conclude with that. Thank you.
Thank you. So, we would still like to take the final question as well from somewhere in the audience. I do have a microphone for the first bidder. Thank you.
Yeah, please just one, so that later on, if I'm asked whether there was debate, then I can say yes.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I think right now the main obstacle in, let's say, getting to a flight is regulation. Like today, I think as a private person, I cannot fly a drone, and to get a business license to, I don't know, deliver pizzas or even like taxi kind of rides. Is there a legislative framework, or how could a business approach this? Let's say we do develop the vehicle and want to launch a service. Is it doable from legislative point of view?
In principle, yes, but it's a novel design. So so the certification process is more complex due to these logical things that we don't have the empirical data. So gathering that in the certification process is just complex.
Is it like the certification of specific vehicle, or if we can find a certified vehicle, then we can launch a service?
Yeah, if you have the certified vehicle, then it's no problem, yeah.
Cool. Well, I think, 15 minutes we get forgiven. Thank you very much, all. Thank you very much, Karl-Erik. This concludes our parallel session. The other room already started on a break, but once we return, we all return in the one main session. So thank you very much to all listeners. We'll see you soon. Thank you.